This is the Church of St. Paul in the Desert.
In the name of God, Sustainer, Redeemer, and Brother. Amen. This is the lucky day in the parish. You have two sermons today. And I'd like to invite the young people and children. You define it however you will. There's no age limit at the top. To come on up and relax and sit down, and we'll see if we can't help the adults understand things a little bit better than what they normally do. Hi, how are you? Come on up. Don't be afraid. It's the church, okay? All right. Shouldn't be. Anyone else missing? Okay. Well, I have a few things to share and show you, and I hope you don't mind if I'm standing because it's easier. By the way, the readers are really good today. Good job on the reading. Advent's the season when we remember who is coming at Christmas. Who's going to get born in Bethlehem? That's very correct. Very good. That's the first part. That's right. We're celebrating the coming of Jesus in Bethlehem. And one of the things we say about Jesus is that he's come to set us free. And what does that mean? Well, sometimes we're not free when we're angry or hurt or someone's mad at us or we've done something bad and don't feel good. And we can feel very constrained and very tight and unfree, afraid to go to school because maybe somebody's bullied us or said something bad. So it's very important that we let Jesus make us free. So I have a couple things I want to show you. This is what's called a chasuble, or what a priest wears when they celebrate the service. This was a homegrown one by someone who was very, very artistic, and her name was Mary. She only died just a couple years ago, and she made this for Advent. It's the same thing that Father Eric is wearing, that big blue thing that he's wearing, the chasuble. This was very cheap because it was homemade. Now, the ones that we buy for the church cost $3 million a piece. Just ask the parish treasurer. But this was really cheap and made out of love. And this was her image of what Advent's all about. So it's blue. That's the color of Advent, midnight blue, because, you know, the thief may come in the middle of the night, so blue is a color for Advent. And what do you see in the white there? What would you call that? You want? Oh, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Circles that are stick together?
Yeah, but what would you call that? You're right. What? You want to allow the adults to help? It's up to you. You know. What would you call that? A chain, yeah, a chain. And a chain is something that holds people together or ties people down or holds something tight, like on a ship or in the back of a truck. This is a chain. Now, what do you notice about the chain? What's different about it? Go ahead.
It's all broken up.
It's broken. The chain has been broken. And that was her symbol, her understanding that when Jesus comes for us, he comes to set us free. And so she made this chain broken. And the chain is broken when we're no longer afraid to love or take a chance or go to school. And to love and be loved, we're free. The chain has been broken. And that's how she symbolized Advent. Well, now I have another chain to show you, a little bit different, just to bring it down to earth. What's this? They know what that is. Yeah, go ahead. Handcuffs. The real deal, man. Yeah, I got these when I was a police chaplain. They were given to me. I never actually wore them. And these are also like chains. And who gets put in these chains?
Bad people?
Bad people, or people who they think did something bad. What's your name, by the way? Mario, and you're? Oh, yeah, Ramon, right? What's your name? Katie? Katie? Oh, nice to meet you guys. I'm David. Anyway, so when someone does something bad or we think they did something bad, we put them in chains, don't we? And these are the chains they put on the wrists, kind of like that, see? Now, when a person has the chains on their wrists, they're not free, are they? They're not free at all. You can't do very much when you're in the chains of handcuffs. Anybody want to volunteer? I should have known. All right, we'll do both of it. You just watch in case I goof up, but I did bring the key, so it's safe. So stand up and put out your hands, and I'm going to use both of you here. Now, the way this works, I'm going to make it real loose, although I do have the key, so there's no disaster. Okay, just like that, see? I'm just going to leave it like that, okay? Don't move your hands. And I'll put that one around like that. Just pretend. Now, pretend they're locked, see? And we've just arrested you. Now, if your hands are locked like that, when you turn here, look at your buddy here. Can you hug him?
No.
Not very easily, huh? Pretty hard to hug when your hands are bound like that. Now, what we're talking about in Christianity and when Jesus is coming is that, in effect, Jesus comes and says, you know what? I love you anyway. Even if you did something bad, I still love you, and I'm going to set you free, just like that chain, and now you can hug him. That's Advent. Good job. After the service, you want to try him, I'll lock you up and undo you, but I'm not going to take a chance now. It could ruin the sermon. Okay. Thank you very much. You did a good job. You take care. Bye-bye.
Maybe it's my birthday card.
Oh, birthday too. Well, we should have put the cuffs on you. Okay. You can go back now. Okay. We're free. So indeed, it is Advent Sunday, the first Sunday of our liturgical year. And I think when Advent hits, probably for most people, our direction sort of heads toward the past. We think in terms of, we're commemorating Christmas again, Jesus born in Bethlehem long ago. If we think in the future, probably we're not getting much farther than December 25th, and hopefully we'll be ready by the time it gets here, and the shopping will be done. The fact of the matter is that Advent is really about the future, far beyond December 25. It's about God's future, a kingdom that has not yet come, but we believe will come. Indeed, the irony and the paradox of Advent, this time of year, although Advent's really all year, the one season that's really all year, is that God's kingdom, as the scriptures describe it, no, it hasn't arrived yet. And yet, in a mysterious and wonderful way, we're actually participating in it right now. That's the paradox of being Christians in the between times. So in Isaiah, that first lesson which you saw, there's a description of God's kingdom, of what it will be like when God finally rules and is fully present. A kingdom that we now as Christians understand is fully completed in the coming or the return of Jesus. That is a basic doctrine of the church. There's lots of different interpretations about how to understand that, but we stand firm that we believe Jesus is not finished, that once he came and was seen just by magi and shepherds, when he comes again, everybody's going to see him whether they want to see him or not. And in that kingdom will be a very distinct new world. The classic passage here that you're all familiar with is, swords shall be beaten into plowshares, spears into pruning hooks. In other words, total disarmament. There will be no war. And by the way, having just read it the other day in the Southern Poverty Law Center newsletter, sort of post-election concerns, there are now currently being tracked in the United States 1,900 hate groups that have various forms and variations on the theme. Not all of them are necessarily violent, but it all wraps around power stuff and hate stuff, things you're keeping hearing about. Some of them are large, some of them are small, but they've grown and increased. They will all disappear. It'll be a world where no disease even exists, and no one will get undone by an unjust legal system because they don't have enough bucks to hire the right lawyer. That world is God's promise to us, the future that is yet to come. The kicker, perhaps, is that this kingdom that Jesus brings back, as Isaiah originally pictured it, does not happen in history as we know it. It's apocalyptic. That's technical for like the book of Revelation. It's something that will probably happen beyond history as we know it. It won't happen here. We are not capable of pulling that off. We are not capable of saving ourselves. The human family, if you look at history, has done amazing and wonderful things. At the same time, we've done a lot of disasters, and they're still going on. Somehow we're just not getting it right as a species, despite many good things. And frankly, we're going to need outside help. We're not going to be able to pull it off ourselves. That's part of the Advent message. We're going to need help, and help will come. I suppose the message for the post-election for those who are happy or those who are very unhappy about recent events is simply this, and maybe in a sense the same message. No election, no president-elect, no president-elect after this president-elect, and none after that, no president ever, no election ever is going to save us. For that matter, no medical breakthrough, no matter how brilliant and amazing, is going to save us. No new technological wonder, no matter how incredible, is going to save us. No matter what the Hubble telescope sees out there that discovers new things that are amazing, these things are not going to save us. We can't do it ourselves. It's just the way it is. But that doesn't mean that what we decide to do in the here and now, in light of the birth of Jesus, does not matter. Every day we make decisions, and we can make decisions that really matter and are consequential. The example that came to my mind was the guy who, this fanatic golf lover, he loved golf, practiced every weekend almost, drove his wife crazy. And as he reached middle age, he was even more fanatic about his golfing, and he was an expert. And he got kind of, since he was a church person, he got kind of nervous about, well, what's it going to be like in heaven? Will there be golf in heaven? I mean, after all, we've heard all that stuff about harps. That sounded pretty boring to him. And he really loved golf. And he actually, maybe he didn't pray about it, but he sort of like prayed about it. Well, one day, in his study, one quiet Sunday afternoon, a strange figure appeared, materializing inside his study near the window. And the figure appeared, he was startled, scared to death, and some kind of angelic messenger stood there and said, I have heard your prayers, God has heard your concerns, and I have been sent to give you good news and bad news. You still want to go to heaven? And, well, yeah. He says, well, the good news is that there is golf in heaven. Incredible golf. The greens go on forever. They're perfectly maintained. Unending golf clubs, balls. The clubhouses are fantastic. You know, the golf carts are wonderful. They never break down. You're going to love it. Oh, wow. Do you still want to go to heaven? Oh, yeah. And then the figure just started to dematerialize and leave, and suddenly the man thought, oh, wait a minute. You said there was bad news. And the angelic figure rematerializes and appears again and says, oh, yes, you tee off tomorrow at 6. Our decisions do affect things. The future of God does affect how we behave. For example, if you had a dear, dear friend that you haven't seen for a long time coming tonight for supper and staying for a few days, that would affect how you behave now. That future would affect your now. You would probably go to the market and get the right foods and prepare a meal. You would probably go into the guest room and change the sheets and fix up the room and makes it nice and do some dusting and cleaning and arrange the table for the dinner and set the table and put out your best stuff and think about where am I going to take my guests, the tramway or to the living desert or the museum or wherever. Yes, the future does impact how you behave. If you were moving back east 3 months from now, that future would impact how you live now. You'd be concerned about where are we going to live? Where's the nearest library, church? Where does work next to where we're going to find a place to live? Who do we talk to? What about all the bank accounts and all the stuff we need to undo here to get ready to move? Which moving van are we going to use? How much is it going to pay? All kinds of behaviors are changed because the future is out there impacting, and that's exactly the position we Christians are in. And I think the code for Christian living is as simple as this, two-letter words. It's that simple. As if. We live as if at any moment we could be called upon to face the incoming of God's kingdom, whether it's a cosmic end of history and some dramatic thing, or in the form of a human being that enters into our life, and we have an opportunity to make a decision that could have eternal consequences in our day-to-day living. You never know when Christ will come. We live as if at any moment. And Jesus' words are, watch, be on alert. In fact, that's classic language in the history of spirituality. Stay alert, stay awake, don't fall asleep, don't go to sleep at the switch. Battle stations, be prepared, pay attention. That's spirituality. Pay attention. You never know. At any moment, you might have to make such a decision. What came to my mind in thinking about that was one of those really great stories from Chicken Soup of the Soul, which are really great modern parables. And this particular story is about a guy named Charlie, who was an art teacher in high school. And Charlie one day came over to his buddy across the street, kind of shaken. He just had a visit from one of his former students, a young lady who had been there about 10 years before. And the story goes something like this. This young teenage girl, when she was a student, was living in a home with a stepfather and a mother. The stepfather was extremely abusive, physically and otherwise, in the worst kinds of ways. The mother didn't see it or didn't choose to see it, which is often the tragic corollary to these kinds of situations. The other spouse doesn't want to see it. She was very depressed. She was very scared. She didn't know what to do, and she had decided, since they were going away for the weekend, that Friday when she came home from school and they were gone, she got all her rags and masking tape and all that stuff together, and she was going to stuff all the holes around the garage door. She knew where the keys were to the other car in the garage, turn it on, sit there, and just be done with it. That's what she had decided. However, she had to go to school that day, and her last class on Friday was the art class with Charlie. And she was doing her thing at her desk there, and Charlie, the teacher, came over and wandering around the class and sat down next to her and looked at her work and asked her a few questions and expressed some words of encouragement and asked, and talked with her for a little bit. And he got up to leave and move on, and he kind of put his arms around her shoulders and gave her a little warm, friendly hug back when teachers weren't afraid to touch their students. And he said, "You have a good weekend, you're doing a good job, keep it up," smiled at her and moved on. Her later testimony was, as she came back to talk to Charlie, was in that moment she was reminded, in the midst of her dark depression, that there were adults who cared, who were not abusive, and that maybe life was worth living after all, that she did not want to die, really. She was intelligent enough to go home, and instead of stuffing the rags around the garage door, she called her pastor, a mandated reporter, who sort of knew the situation, kind of. And long story short, he arranged to have her picked up, taken to foster care. She left that family forever, and 10 years later, she had come back as a young woman with a job, a family of her own, and she came back to thank Charlie for saving her life. Any moment, as if at any moment, you might encounter somebody where your decisions could be eternal in their effect. The wonderful corollary to this story about Charlie, the teacher, and this young lady was that as he spoke to his friend, telling him what had happened with this visit, lo, these 10 years later, he said, what's really amazing, I don't even remember that event. I don't even remember. But she did, and her life was spared because Charlie made a decision to love. That is the stance and the mission call for Christian persons. At any moment, watch and be alert. The birth of Christ in time, in history, means that in a strange way, the light of that kingdom has already dawned, even though it's not here yet. And we live in that light. We are even now children of God as we celebrate Christmas again. And even though the kingdom's not here, God is, in a strange way, anticipating that day when the full dawn will appear. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist, Jewish psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust in World War II, wrote years later in his several books that what really saved people, the people who survived the Holocaust in Europe, the ones who survived were the ones who had hope. It might have been in the form of finding their brother after the stupid war was over. It might have been going back to the farm to see what was still left. It might have been finding their sister somewhere or just emigrating across the ocean and start a new life after this horror was over with. But those who had some kind of hope, some future out there, they tended to survive. The others died. And indeed, I'm told by my colleagues at the counseling center in Redlands, where I still help a little bit, that the research on suicide has not changed. People who take their own lives or attempt to do so It's not because of how much they're hurting or what's going on or what the nature of the problem is or how embarrassed they are or what their psychological impediments are. The people who make the attempt to take their own lives are people who lose hope. No future. That's what kills. If there's any hope, you can hang on. That's the Advent message as you watch the evening news and contemplate the realities of our world. So, even though our human story is fraught with disasters and many discouragements, well, God will have the last word. The good news is that outside help is available. And as a matter of fact, the good news is that we don't have to save ourselves because we can't, but we don't need to. And every time that we participate in this Eucharist, every time we reach out and embrace another person as a brother or sister, or they embrace us, every time those things happen, we are catching the light of that first rays of the dawn of a kingdom that is not here yet, and yet we're already living in it. Christ has come, and Christ will come again.